and welcome to the 2015 Delhi election tracker as we count down to the last days, and today is indeed the last day of campaigning in the capital city. I'm joined by Yashwant Deshmukh of CVoter as always. Shankar Ayaz also joins us, well-known commentator on the confluence of politics and economics. The question we are asking today is which vote bank will decide these elections? That's a question that we've been asking for a while, and we've been trying to find the interesting threads within, which are not just interesting because it's happening in Delhi, but it's also perhaps happening for the first time in Indian elections, and the manner in which they will award the mandate to the final winner if there is one, and well, it could be a tie. So we're going to be looking at 3 or 4 things. We're going to be asking, one is of course looking at the latest seat share and vote share projection numbers, but we're also going to be looking at some of the breakdowns, gender, education, working group, income group, and trying to understand who's voting in which direction or likely to vote in which direction. And there are some very interesting insights there as we will come to shortly. So the top line numbers as we are at the last, at the last day of campaigning seem to be now still at a tie. At least that's what your poll is showing.
It's a very tight race. It's a too close race to call. I mean, if you look into not just us but all the polls across and 5 major polls that we have been tracking, there are 2 polls that are saying that Aam Aadmi Party has a virtual lead right now. That is basically Cicero, and another one is C4. There is one poll which is saying, a Nielsen poll, which is saying it's heading for a hung assembly. And then there are 2 polls, CVoter and IMRV, which are saying that BJP has a lead. So this virtually confirms that this election is too close to call. That's what that's what the bottom line is. And having said that, what we must remember and what we must understand, that there are ballpark figures. We can look into all the polls and come around that, okay, BJP has a vote bank of approximately 40% right now. Aam Aadmi Party has a vote bank approximately 40% right now. Congress has approximately 10% and others has a 10%. These are the 40, 40, 10 and 10. These are the broad ballpark vote components, as we can say. And why the turnout factor is important is for a simple reason to understand. And I would love to explain this because this is a very, very critical element of the election day. Generally speaking, in opinion polls, everybody virtually confirms that yes, I am going to vote. There are very few people who actually turn out and say that I am undecided or I may or may not be voting. A big number of people in any opinion poll, they always say, it's a global phenomena. People generally tend to say, yes, I am confirming that I am going to vote. What happens is that not everybody comes out to vote, that we also know. Generally, we have seen that Indian turnout has been 60 to 65% generally. But in the last couple of years, in the assembly elections, we have seen this turnout go up to as high as 80%, typically in anti-incumbency verdict. Delhi is unique because here, unlike the other Indian states in recent past, where one party, among the top 2 parties, one party has been gaining momentum, another losing the ground. Delhi is the only state where actually both the top two parties have been gaining momentum since the last assembly elections. BJP and Aam Aadmi Party, if you compare their vote share from the last assembly election 1 year back, both are actually on one swing, which makes it very, very unique scenario. So the relative turnout of the bloc of Aam Aadmi Party and the relative turnout of the bloc of the BJP and the relative turnout of the bloc of the Congress is what going to eventually decide which way the final outcome is going to be.
Right. Okay. So we're going to get into the details, as I was saying earlier, which is to start looking at gender, age group. Shankar, your thoughts on how the contest has shaped out so far?
Well, to me, it looks like this is a contest between mass appeal and mass organization. And I a little more on mass organization in the ability of the party to get their vote to the booth. And that's eventually what will decide the outcome of this election. There's also a bit of a class going on, VIPs versus the rest. And then if you see the object, I think this is one of those elections where, for some strange reason, the BJP's campaign has been completely negative. Instead of focusing on the trump card with governance and the idea of Modi and the model, they have gone and made it individual. So in a David versus Goliath fight or an underdog versus the big guy, the moment the underdog gets identified, individualized contest, the big party has trouble on its hands.
Right.
Having
Okay.
said,
Yeah.
I won't be surprised if there's a surprise on resulting.
Right, right. Thanks, Shankar, for that. Yashwant, let me come back to you. So let's begin with looking at the gender, right? So, which is what we've talked about a fair bit. A clear, as things stand, as a clear preference on the part of males to vote for AAP, and a clear preference on the part of the females to vote for BJP. Now, the question that we'll ask at each point is, how much of this is likely to actually determine the outcome?
Well, big time in a way that, especially keeping in mind that female turnouts in Indian election have been erratic of sort, in a way that in few elections, the female turnout has been higher than the male turnout. But generally speaking, given the gender gap, say for example in Delhi, it's not a 50-50 scenario for male and female electorate. It is 53 and 47 gap. That means that the males in Delhi have a 6% head-on advantage over the population of the female voters in Delhi. So that is where the Aam Aadmi Party base is coming from. But the gap of the female voters in terms of their margins is higher in terms of the BJP. So this is where the BJP is gaining strength. But this kind of gender gap was visible 15 years back, which Shankar would remember, that when BJP was kicked out after the Delhi elections, when Sheila Dikshit won the first mandate. And at that point of time, our exit poll had clearly shown the big number of middle class and especially women deserting the BJP on the issue of onion prices. So this is actually contrast to that scenario where BJP is actually heading the numbers as far as the female voter is concerned and housewives are concerned.
This is interesting because this seems to me that almost across all age groups, that's below 22 to 22 to 27, 27 to 32, 32 to 37, 37 to 42, 42 and above, almost everyone seems to be voting uniformly either for BJP or for AAP. Is that unusual?
There are trends in that. If you look into the first-timer voters, or if you look into the youth voters,
yeah,
first-timers, there is a slight advantage for the AAP. In the youth, it's a dead heat, just neck and neck between BJP and the AAP. And as the age group goes, there is a certain sense of voting more for the BJP and even for the Congress, if you look at it that way. So as the it confirms couple of things, that Aam Aadmi Party support, big time support, is actually coming from the youth voters. Look at the 47 and the 40 at the bottom. So you understand that there is a 7% gap between the youth and the old as far as the Aam Aadmi Party's support base is concerned. While in case of BJP, it's actually the inverted pyramid. So that is also evident, and that is also going to play an important role on the relative turnout. This relative turnout, Govind, is very important. Let me explain just in a minute to the viewers and our panelists as well. You see, when in the poll we are taking, say, approximately at a 70% turnout ratio, when everybody is saying that they are going to come out and vote, what happens is that if suppose BJP and Aam Aadmi Party in polls are saying 40% each in a 70% turnout, but if the vote block composition, say the Dalits and the minorities and the low income group, their turnout becomes 80% on the polling day, then the lead of Aam Aadmi Party becomes about 5% over the BJP. On the other hand, if the middle class and the women, they touch a turnout of 80%, then the BJP leads over the Aam Aadmi Party by about 5%. So for 1% differential in turnout, the gap between the parties is 0.5%. So this is what is critical on the polling day. So if the block, one block of Aam Aadmi Party support base, that is the Dalit, minority and the low income group, if their turnout increases, then the gap between the Aam Aadmi Party and the BJP increases in favor of the Aam Aadmi Party. But if the middle class, the women and the upper caste, this turnout increases, then the gap between the BJP and the Aam Aadmi Party increases in favor of the BJP. Traditionally speaking, we have seen that the first block, that is the low income group, Dalit and the minority votes or the Muslim votes have traditionally been a very good on the turnout factor, while the middle class have not been traditionally very good on the turnout factor. It is only in the last couple of years that the middle class turnout has started matching up or the beating up the rest of the blocks, as has happened in 2014 as parliamentary elections. But traditionally, the bloc of Aam Aadmi Party has a proven turnout history, while the bloc of the BJP is something which has a turnout history only with when the organization puts it into fifth gear, as Shankar was mentioning, whether it is a election of the masses or election of the organization strength.
Right, and we'll come to the income groups in a moment, but let's look at now, and let's go sequentially so it's easier to build the argument. Let's look at education, right? So when we look at education, it's interesting, and let's pull up that chart there. 51% of those in the lower education category are voting for AAP or want to vote for AAP, 34% for BJP. Middle education, which I'm just going to ask Yashwant for the definition of that, but 40% up and 47%, and of course, which is something which is known, the higher education or the more educated, which is which classically or perhaps at least for now is now voting BJP, and only 34% of the higher educated are voting for AAP. So, Yashwant, I'm going to come to you in a second, but how are you seeing this, Shankar, in your from your vantage point? Okay, so Shankar didn't hear me, I think. Okay, let me come back to Yashwant. Yashwant, first of all, what is middle education? Can you explain to us?
It's basically on the line of the education up to the primary level, education up to high school and secondary level, and education beyond secondary level. So that's the low, middle, and the high. That means those who have been less than primary or the up to primary, those have been up to high school and the higher secondary level, and those who are above higher secondary, that means the graduates and postgraduates.
Right. Okay. So now let's look at the working group. Now this is where it gets even perhaps a little more interesting. So 50% of housewives would want to vote for the BJP, only 37% for AAP. Amongst government service, it's 48% BJP, 41% up. Private sector, 41% BJP, 50% up. That's interesting again. If you look at labor, and this is where the difference is the sharpest, 25% with BJP and 55% with AAP. And actually, this is the only area where perhaps the Congress also has some showing in the statistical numbers, which is at 14%. So, what explains this, Yashwant? So, a very high variation amongst housewives and general labor when it comes to choosing either the BJP or the AAP.
That's right, and that's a traditional Congress vote group that has been shifted to the Aam Aadmi Party completely. The housewife composition is very interesting because when I pull out the 1998 exit poll data, this was virtually the opposite way. Almost 52% of the housewives had voted for the Congress at that point of time. But the general labor or the low income group or the low education group, as we call it, that form a bulk of the electoral strength in Delhi, and that is a big number of electoral size in Delhi. And also to cap it, the private service sector, where the Aam Aadmi Party has taken the lead. This is one thing which could prove critical for the Aam Aadmi Party, because in the Lok Sabha election, it was this class which had voted big time for the BJP.
Right, and if we were, I mean, we don't have the comparison figures here, but Yashwant, do you have a sense on how these sectors or these sections performed or voted in the Vidhan Sabha 2013 elections?
Well, certainly, yes. There is a big change as far as the composition is concerned. The housewives at that point of time had voted big number of them into favor of Aam Aadmi Party. There was a clearly a lead for AAP in the government services and the private sector services as well. But a big number of the general labor had voted for the Congress at that point of time. So we are shifting we are looking at a shift kind of thing where the middle classes in a way have shifted from Aam Aadmi Party to the BJP, and Aam Aadmi Party has got compensated more than enough from the lower income group strata that has shifted from the Congress to the Aam Aadmi Party.
Right. Shankar, how are you reading it so far? I'm sure you've been listening. I'm sorry we couldn't get through to you earlier.
Now, the one thing that really is interesting is that the kind of sops and discounts that Aam Aadmi Party is promising the voter would actually go to benefit household budgets. And I'm quite mystified as to why they can't woo the housewives who seem to be more keen to vote for the BJP. I can understand the government servant not wanting to vote for the Aam Aadmi Party because there is an element of disruption, element of all the sting operations that came into play last year. So those guys probably don't want to engage with the Aam Aadmi Party or invite trouble. But given the fact that the Aam Aadmi Party is promising 50% cut in power tariff, free water, and all sorts of things, it's interesting that the housewives and the households, middle class households, which would tend to benefit from this, are more keen to vote for the BJP. And therein, I think there is a signal that while the opinion polls may be forecasting a big win for the Aam Aadmi Party, I somehow tend to think that we might be surprised by the results vis-a-vis the opinion polls.
Right. Except that, Shankar, maybe this one is not predicting a complete win. At least that's what the numbers are saying. Yashwant, let me come back to you.
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
Even the edge that that people are talking about.
Yeah.
I don't see the logic for that edge when you contrast the behavior or the intent to vote for, and the backing that BJP has in certain sections and the optics of the survey findings.
Okay. Yashwant, any quick response on that before we go on to income groups?
No, this is an interesting phenomena, and this we have been tracking for the last almost 4 months now. The gender dividend we have talked for more than one occasion, and gender dividend was evident as far as the parliamentary election was concerned in the last in 2014. What thing has probably gone further in favor of the BJP is the fact that unlike the male respondents, where the top of the mind recall for the issues is inflation and corruption in Delhi, among the female respondents, the top of the mind recall issue is not corruption, but it is the female safety. And this is something which is very unique to understand. I guess that some dividend BJP has also got because of the Kiran Bedi's image of super cop and issues on the female safety. And let's not forget the fact that among the females, the popularity rating of Modi have been always all-time high for the last 1 odd years in all the polls, not just CVoter polls, in all the polls. So this is very interesting. This is one interesting factor which I have been pointing out. If that middle class female factor, as our polls have been saying, if that works out in favor of the BJP, then a lot of people are going to be surprised with the results. But somehow, right, if that doesn't work for the BJP as being indicated by the polls, then in that case, I think it could be Aam Aadmi Party all the way.
Right. Okay. Let's look quickly now as we run out of time. Let's look at income group. So again, lower income group 33% BJP, 50% AAP, as you can see there. Middle income 45% BJP, 41% AAP, somewhat similar. Higher income group, once again a sharp variation, 52% in favor of BJP, 39% in favor of AAP. And let's pick up another section so we can discuss this faster. Scheduled castes are, when we look at social groups, scheduled castes again 51% AAP, 37% BJP. Other backward classes, surprisingly there's a reverse, or maybe not surprising, 49% BJP, 35% AAP. upper class Hindus, 64% in favor of BJP, 32% up. And Sikhs, interestingly, 56% favor BJP and 35% up. And Muslim, perhaps not so surprisingly, 12% BJP, which is actually lower than the Congress. Perhaps this is the only area where there is a segment which is perhaps clearly preferring Congress over BJP, and AAP, of course, which is at 70%, and that's a large gap. So, Yashwant, let's look at both the income and the social group classifications very quickly. So, the lower higher income group, I guess we've talked about in the past, most lower income group clearly have preferred AAP, and that's the consistent trend. And reverse, I mean, on the other hand, higher income group have preferred the BJP. Now, in the social groups, is there anything unusual or new that you're seeing?
It's the complete, what is unusual is the complete polarization of the Muslim and the Dalits in favor of the Aam Aadmi Party. In the last election, this was not this acute. Aam Aadmi Party did make a dent, considerable dent in Muslim and the Dalit votes, but this time it is a complete one-way traffic. On the other hand, you can see the surge of the upper caste votes in favor of the BJP, which was always the BJP vote bank. But in the last assembly election, a considerable section of this vote had gone to Aam Aadmi Party, which has kind of come back to the BJP. So that's why I'm saying this is going to be very interesting in terms of socio-economic. One section which has surprised me in a way that the numbers among the six were earlier pro Aam Aadmi Party. Right now it is a pro BJP, and this could be important considering there are 7%, approximately 7% Sikh votes in Delhi. I wonder if it has anything to do with the BJP projecting a Sikh female as the CM candidate.
Okay, that's it. Okay, that's interesting. And you know, so far we've not talked about you know, the who's likely to win this one or who's not. But let's close. I mean, and let's look at what the consensus figures of all the or at least some of the leading polling agencies were. So we look at Cicero, TNS, Nielsen, C4, IMRB, and of course CVoter. So the average poll of polls, right? So 42 with AAP, 39 with BJP, 12 with Indian National Congress, and 8 with others. Closing comments, Shankar?
I think, you know, I'm not surprised first to sort of add on to what Yashwant was saying about the Sikh votes. There is also a new probe being ordered in the 1984 riots, so that might have something to do with this. And also, you see the labor class and the lowest income people, those who are traditionally in the unorganized sector and self-employed, they tend to think that they will have some kind of protection from party in terms and stuff. So that's the
Right.
other thing. In terms of the and the Shukas, not at all surprising, because I think what Yashwant has been also pointing out, that the wedge has grown, the gap has grown, is primarily because of the classic utterances of the fringe group within the BJP. I don't know whether they're the fringe or the core anymore, but those utterances have damaged BJP. You remember this campaign started with the famous statement about Ram Zadas and other Zadas. So
Yeah.
that has had a lasting impact on
Right.
across minorities.
Right, right. Thanks, Shankar, for that. Yashwant, last word. The campaigning is concluding. We are now waiting, obviously, for the date that people will actually go ahead and cast their votes, and thus, you know, show who they really will vote for wherever they come from. So, any last words on what we should be looking out for before we meet next week?
Well, I must say that this is probably is the first election after a long time where I am looking at the socio-economic divide rather than a religious divide in the city.
Right.
I mean, Muslims voted against the BJP is not a new phenomena, but certainly there is no counter polarization. So I don't treat this as a religious polarization, but what I see that the classes, the income groups, the education group, and the social group, it turns out that this election is looking at a very, very extreme polarization in terms of socio-economic categorizations. and that is very interesting. This is a new way of looking at the election and the issues, and the new way that any Indian society is actually going to vote for the two parties and or the two chief ministerial candidates. So I am looking forward to some really nice data in the exit poll and a lot more to churn around into the final results and see how this the Delhi experiment or the Delhi election is going to fan out in the coming years in the rest of the Indian states. Because let me underline the fact, it's about the middle classes big time ballooning of the bufferization of the middle class that is taking shape across India. And the more the middle class buffer would be there, the lesser emphasis would be on the caste and religious lines.
Right, and that's a great note to conclude, I guess. We are looking at voting on the 7th and counting on the 10th, so there's not much of a gap and not much suspense as you wait and see what all our efforts in trying to glean and understand what you, the voter, is thinking and is likely to vote, or which way is likely to vote, and whether that's going to be and whether how we can understand you better, and of course help the rest of the country understand this very crucial election that's going to happen in Delhi. That's the 2015 Delhi election tracker. We are going to be back with the counting, and thank you very much for watching and stay tuned.